Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 2.23, and in this lesson we're going to build up our little effects layer that we've created here and add on our EQ DJ, and then we're going to top it off with a filter. So we're going to add something new to the puzzle in this lesson, but let's just go ahead and jump right in. So we now know that all of our signal is coming through our fader here. So if I'm playing back and I turn down my controller all the way, we're not going to hear anything. If I bring it up and I slam it, we're good to go, and we are not clipping or anything like that, which is great. So let's go ahead and add an EQ DJ onto this. To do that, very simple. You could either click the plus button and just select EQ DJ, or from your browser, you can of course go in, find the EQ DJ under Audio Effects, and drag and drop. Either way works exactly the same. So I've already set my crossover frequencies to something I like. They call it the split frequencies. So we now know that our lows are controlling everything 226 hertz and below, and our high is covering everything that's at 1.97K and above, meaning our mid-range is going between 226 and 1.97. So let's make this a little easier for ourselves, and let's map these knobs to our macro controls. So with your macro controls, you have two choices. You have either bipolar or traditional. So traditional, we're going to go from lowest to highest. You can see 0 to 100%. And in bipolar mode, we have the ability to go either up or down, but the default setting is straight in the middle. Now, if you have a controller where your knobs are bipolar, I would encourage you to use the bipolar mode. If you have knobs that are not bipolar, as in there's not like a click in the middle when you're turning the knob, it might make a little bit more sense to work outside of bipolar mode. So I'll show you the two ways you can map this. If you are working in bipolar mode, it's really easy. I'm just going to click this arrow here, and in this case, I'm just going to drag all the way around. So all the way to +2. I'll deselect my map, and now as I turn this left and right, it should just follow what's happening on the EQ DJ. Perfect. Now, truth be told, you're not really going to want to make too many boosts when you're DJing. Maybe occasionally 1 or 2 dB to the mid-range, perhaps 1 or 2 dB to the high range, but you don't ever have to, because thinking what we know about the frequency spectrum, it should be pretty obvious that if we decrease our lows and our mids, the emphasis is going to be placed on the highs. If we decrease our lows and our highs, the emphasis will be on the mid. So you can make boosts by cutting, and you're never going to have to worry about getting muddy or adding too many dBs. So this is another alternative if you want. What you could do here is I'm going to right click, I'll clear that. I'm going to set this out of bipolar mode. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this all the way down. Okay, and now I'm going to map it. And I'm just going to pull this up to +1. And now, as I turn this, if I go all the way up to 100, I'm at my 0 mark. I'm at where I am to start. But now the nice thing about this is, let's say I want to learn my controller assignment. I already have one on there, so let's clear it. Let's learn one. I'll take this knob here. Okay, and now the nice thing is, as I'm playing back, let's go for this one. So now I can just pull this back, right? I'm killing the lows. If I want to slam it, I never have to worry about going over or going into the reds or getting muddy or anything like that, which is pretty handy. So you can do it either way, and there isn't one right way, one wrong way. Traditional DJs are going to be used to working in bipolar, but if you're not really familiar with DJing or you haven't practiced all that much, this is totally fine and would work just the same. I'm going to use the traditional setup, and I'm going to go here, clear that, switch this into bipolar. And let's put this back, and now I'm just going to map it how I had it before. Okay, perfect. So we're going to do this for the mids and for the highs. And great, we don't even need to be looking at our EQ DJ anymore. So to close it up, all I have to do is double click. And now if I didn't want to see anything but my macros, I can double click the layer right here. And if I map these out to a couple of different controllers, let's see. Awesome, so now I've got these three mapped. If I'm playing back my track, I don't even need to be looking at any of the devices. I can just control it all from the macros and with my knobs. Just like that, very, very simple stuff. So let's add on something else for fun. Let's add on a filter. So you're probably all very familiar of this type of a sound. And to add my filter, I've just clicked plus and added the filter. So let's choose this scene here. So you probably heard DJ sets where somebody will do something like a little bit of a filter sweep there. So we're using a low pass filter. You could choose either variety, whatever sounds better to you, to be honest. And all this is gonna do, which we're so familiar with by now, is take our high frequencies, and as we pull this back, it's going to do exactly what you see in this image here. We're gonna cut all of our high frequencies until a point, which is our cutoff point there. Now, you're probably gonna want a little bit of resonance as well, because it's going to give the filter sweep a little bit more of that whoosh, whoosh sound. And what the resonance is it's basically just boosting wherever your cutoff point is. So if we're at something like 3.93K, if I boost this resonance way up, we're gonna be really hearing a peak at that 3.9K, and I can let you hear it. It might be a little harsh, but we'll take a listen. So you can hear that we're getting more of that type sound, which I should probably never try to do that again, but whatever. However, we don't want to have our resonance boosted from the start, because if our filter is in at the start right now, we're going to be boosting at like that 20K mark. And you may not notice it per se, but it is going to be there, and it's going to be kind of a shrill type sound, and it could cause some ear fatigue rather quickly. So we're gonna have to do some clever mappings here, and you're gonna have to bear with me because sometimes it's gonna be a little bit counterintuitive. So the first thing I wanna set is my cutoff, and I don't probably wanna go much below 300, 200K. Let's listen back and just hear what this sounds like real quick so I can hear how much frequency range is being taken out. Try with the bass. Okay, I like where I am right there. That's good enough for me. I'm probably never going to want to go too much lower than that. So let's see if I can get this to map properly. Sometimes this can be kind of a challenge. So I'm just going to click my map button here. I'm going to pull this all the way up, but not around, just to the end. So you have to be very careful. If you keep pulling around and around, well, I'll show you what happens. So if I pull all the way around here and I unmap it and I pull my cutoff up, you can see that even when I'm like at this point around, my cutoff is all the way at the top. And I don't really want to do that because it's basically just a waste of time and just a waste of space. So I'm going to edit this guy up. I'm going to pull this back and try to just get it to the very end. All right, that's probably going to work for me. So now if I'm all the way at the top and we play back, we should just be playing back our original signal without any sort of EQ or filter. But if I pull this back, we have that little filter action happening. Now you can hear, and what I've noticed about pretty much all of the devices inside of Bitwig is they are really, really surgical. They are really clean. The definition of digital, which as we've talked about before, really reducing that signal to noise ratio. But in most classic EQs and DJ EQs and stuff, we like to have a little bit of extra dirt and grime. And I'm gonna first add that in by using a little bit of resonance here. So let's see if I can get this set properly. This is the one that kind of, I never know what I'm doing. So I'm gonna pull this up. I'm probably never gonna want more than maybe, well, let's just try 28. So I'm gonna select the map button here, and I'm gonna pull this down. Okay, and I want to be down to 0 here. So at the start, you can see that our resonance is, our arrow in our resonance is pointing to this spot, but we're not getting anything. And that's because I have to pull this down to actually introduce any resonance. And that's exactly what I want to have happening here. I don't want any resonance when my signal is just playing back without using the filter. But as I start to sweep, I would like to have some of that resonance coming in so we can get a little bit movement, a little bit more of that whooshing type sound. Let's take a listen and see if this sounds any better now. Or not better, but just different. Let's use the vocals. So we could maybe use a little bit more resonance. So I'm going to actually clear this, start over. I'm going to pull it up a little bit higher, maybe this way, as we're really sweeping down. We can get some power and movement in the filter. And let's map it. Again, you can map multiple things to the same control, which is awesome. I'll pull this down. Cool. So now let's take a listen, see if we like it anymore. Okay, I like that. I think that's pretty much what I want to get. So I'm gonna leave it like that. Now, for me, this filter is still sounding way too clean. It sounds very much like a digital filter. It doesn't sound like the sort of filter you'd have on an EQ console, which is gonna add a little bit of that analog noise into the signal. So I'm actually going to add on a distortion unit. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. All I've done here is I've gone through the presets and I tended to like the low distortion, and then I just made a couple of additional changes myself to give it a sound that I liked. But if you don't know how to adjust these settings, don't worry, you can just pick a preset and find something you like. So the way I did that was I played back and I just kind of boosted the mix level. And so to me, that's a pretty nice sounding distortion. It just kind of is adding a little bit of that shh type noise that you would expect to find in an analog signal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this way down, maybe to around, I don't know, 19 or 20%. And again, I don't want this coming in all the time. So I need to map this to another knob, and I'm going to map it to the exact same one that I've already done my cutoff and my resonance with. And I'm just going to select map, and I'm going to pull my mix down so that we're not seeing a signal. Cool. Turn that off. So now as I pull this back, we're going to start to get a little bit of that distortion sound with our filter as it's moving. Okay, it's not perfect. I'd like to just kind of have it come in whenever I'm using the filter, but I'm not 100% sure how I could go about doing that at this point inside of Bitwig. Maybe somebody else out there knows, but this for me is going to give me just a little bit nicer sounding filter. So let's play this back and take a listen. It might be inaudible to some of you, but I can definitely hear that little bit of distortion when I'm turning the filter. And maybe we could even add a little bit more if we wanted to. I'll just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to clear it. In this case, I'll pull up, so I don't know, 27%. That might be a bit much, but whatever. And we'll map it. And now let's just listen one more time. Yeah, I like that sound quite a bit. That's what I think I'm going to stick with and use. So now the nice thing is we don't even need to have any of these things open anymore. We know what these knobs are going to be controlling. And in the case of our EQs, we know that when we're at 0, we're back to our original level. And as we go down, we're cutting. As we increase, we're boosting. So I can just double click and I can close these guys down if I want. And if you even want to get more fancy, you could make mappings in here specifically for your distortion device. But we're not going to worry about that right now. I think we're pretty much good to go here. And that should just about do it. So you can go ahead and save this. And let's just save this as Brian, DJ, EQ, and filter. And I'm going to actually save it under effects. And I'm going to call it layered and analog because we tried to add in a little bit of that distortion there. So I'll click OK. And now that's going to be saved into my browser, into my library, so I can go back and grab this at any point. And so if I wanted to, I could find it from within the browser, assuming I saved this correctly. Let's see. Or actually, it might be in our containers, right? FX layer. There it is. Brian, DJ, EQ, and filter. And so I could go into my second deck, just go ahead and clear this, and I could bring it in. Now, the one issue is that I think it's going to save and bring in our mappings from our controller. So that's going to cause us some issues. So we're going to have to make sure that we reset these so that they're being triggered by different knobs and different faders. But that's pretty much going to do it for this video. In the next video, we're going to talk about adding one more piece of the puzzle, getting just a tiny bit more complex in our DJ setup. And from there, we're going to be ready to try and perform live. So stay tuned and you will hear from me again in the next lesson.